Today on Free Field Training, we're going to tackle a question that came up in the comments section. Someone asked what the difference is between city police and a county sheriff's department and why most places have both of them. Where are you going? Get out of the way! All right, so to understand why you have city police, sheriff's departments, state police, and feds, and then private police and university police and forest preserve police, and why all these different agencies have kind of overlapping geographical jurisdictions, you have to understand what jurisdiction really means. You see, jurisdiction isn't just the geography, the space of the government entity that hires the person who's going to be a police officer, sheriff's deputy, or whatever the title is that they're going to use. It's not just that space. It's also what the job of those people entails. And you'd be surprised how much overlap there is in the types of jobs that they're doing as well, at least on paper. You see, as a police officer for a city, I have the authority to enforce all federal, state, county, and local laws inside of the city. Right? And a sheriff's deputy who is working the street has the authority to enforce all federal, state, and county laws within the county. So it would seem like the only area that doesn't overlap is with those city ordinances, which are, not always really important things. They're not things that you would necessarily need a separate police department for, right? But even though on paper, even probation officers and parole officers and federal agents and private police and everybody has that same statutory arrest authority for the things that the police department takes care of most, traffic tickets and arrests for misdemeanors and felonies. The jobs that the agencies do are very different. See, people don't see the majority of what happens in law enforcement. That's why people that get traffic tickets a lot assume that all cops go out and write tickets all day. And you could see that in the comment section. All anybody talks about is writing tickets. People only see the little area of the criminal justice system they deal with. So most people only think of it in terms of traffic. So if you see a city police officer pulling traffic on the same street as a state trooper and a county sheriff, they say, why do we have all these different agencies? And I think that's a good question to ask. It's good to try to streamline government any way we can. But if you look at what the agencies themselves do, it's very different than what the individual officers are empowered by law to do. All these people can do the same things under color of law, or pretty much the same things under color of law in their respective jurisdictions, but they do, as an agency, very dissimilar things. And there isn't as much overlap as people would think. From the base level of police work, you have the sheriff's department, which has a policing wing, you would say, or a policing department within it. You have the state police, whose main job, no matter what they might tell you, their main job is to handle the highways in most places. At least every place I've ever been, the state police, they're working on the highway. And the local police are taking care of the town. And what that allows is the local authorities to have more control over problems that are going to be coming up from having a more populated area. Right? Now, a sheriff's department doesn't just do what a police department does. A lot of people talk about a sheriff's department. They say, well, it's like the police for the whole county, but the main part of their job is to take care of, or their job is to take care of the areas that aren't part of the city. Well, that's kind of true and kind of not true. The sheriff's department is the police for the whole county everywhere that I'm aware of. They're the police for the whole county, so they could come into the city, but then it comes down to what's their actual job. Right? Like, there's things that they're allowed to do, but then there's the things that's their job to do, right? So the county police could come into the city and pull traffic, and they do. They do. It doesn't bother me any. I'm more than happy to have somebody come out and take some of my work away from me. I got enough work to do as it is. They can come into the city, but it's not their job, right? So the sheriff's police the sheriff's deputies who are out pulling traffic or making arrests, self-initiated stuff, are also doing it in the city. So people see this overlap. Well, what you don't see is that the calls to the local police department, they're only taking calls and dispatching people unless another agency asks for help in the city. The state is only taking calls for things that happen on the highway. And the county is only taking calls for things in unincorporated areas of the county that they're directly responsible for. What you don't see with sheriff's departments is everything else that the sheriff's department does. Literally 75% of what they do is not policing. At least where I'm at. In a major metropolitan area, the sheriff's department has to run the jail. They have to run the security for the courthouse. They have to run maintenance for the courthouse. They have to run the temporary lockups at the district courthouses. They have to provide transports between the district courthouses and the central jail facility. And they have to do extraditions. And they have to do civil processes. And they have to do evictions. They have all sorts of stuff that the sheriff's department has to do. And then within this big agency, there's a branch of it that is the policing section of the sheriff's department. In fact, here in Illinois, in Cook County, we have the Cook County Sheriff's Police. You can Google it. It says right on the side of their car, Sheriff's Police, and it's goofy to people who aren't from around here, but that's what they do. I know the New York City has a sheriff's department that does just civil processes and just evictions and things like that. It's a totally separate thing. Now, as a police officer, I could do a lot of that stuff. I'm empowered by law to do it, but there isn't a functional method by which for me to do them. Like, I don't have the paperwork just to serve an eviction or to do a civil process. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't know how to, because it's not the job function that I have every day. It wasn't what I was trained to do. Now, the state police, on the other hand, they deal with the highway. And anything that happens on the highway is their jurisdiction. That doesn't mean that they can't come into the city and pull traffic. That doesn't mean they couldn't answer a call in the city if they wanted to, but they don't because it's not their job, right? There's so much of this stuff going on with the county, and since the people in the city want more police services, and that's why people build cities, is to have more government services. That's why we don't have ditches in the city, at least most cities. You don't have, ditches on the side of the road. You have a sewer system. And that's why you have alleys in cities, is because people want those extra services. They want to be able to have alleys and have their trash in the alley and picked up in the alley. And they also want more policing services. And they require more policing services because there's more population density. And anytime we have more population density, there's more crime, and there's more cars, and there's more things to deal with. Now, while it's theoretically possible that you could have just one policing agency for like a whole state that deals with criminal matters, in fact, Germany does it that way. The state handles all criminal matters, and then there's smaller local departments that only deal with ordinances. That takes a lot of power away from local government to handle local issues the way they want to. And centralizing law enforcement power makes it easier for a stronger central government to use the police to push some sort of political agenda on, let's say, the rest of the state or the rest of the county. So it's actually nice having those smaller jurisdictions. That's the same reason that colleges have police departments, is that a college has very different needs than the city does, and the city has very different needs from what the county does, and the county has very different needs from what the state has when they're doing highways and the crime lab and all the other weird stuff that the state does. Now, there's this misconception that there's all of this rivalry between local departments and the college police and the state and the county and all of that. That might be true in some places. I've been to places where they're like, oh, damn county sheriffs and stuff like that, but I don't really see it where I'm at. Maybe it's just that everybody has too much work to do to be part of that type of shenanigans. In fact, when county sheriff's deputies, sheriff's police come into my town and pull people over, I often walk up to the car and make a joke about, you're in my town poaching, and they roll the window down and they laugh. I'm like, leave your back doors open and I'll shove more crackheads in there for you. What are you looking for? You looking for DUIs? I tell you right where you go. Go over on 147th Street when Adriana's lets out about 3 o'clock in the morning. You're going to find DUIs all up and down that street. We barely have time to do DUIs. Have that, brother. More than happy to have them come by. The other misconception that I hear about all the time is that there's some fight over cases. That there'll be a crime in the city, and then the state or the county or the feds, and in movies it's always the feds. The feds will come in and they're going to take over this case. Let me tell you something. When the feds come in to take over a case, everyone rejoices. Oh, this bank got robbed and we've been working it for 12 hours and the FBI shows up. Good. Here you go. Here's the files. There's the witnesses. Hey, we're pulling the crime scene tape. You need some coffee? You want some coffee? I'll get you some coffee. What kind of coffee you want? Hey, we got the hookup at Jimmy's Donuts. What kind of donuts you like? You like some donuts? Because we're just happy that they showed up to take the quagmire that is this messed up case. The feds don't come in and take over cases. And everybody goes, this is our homicide. We want this homicide. It doesn't work that way. And it's the same thing with the county and the state. In fact, if you find a local police officer, a sheriff's deputy, and a state trooper all on one crime scene together, Normally, the conversation that you're going to have is them arguing over who is going to do the paper on it, who's going to be stuck with the case. And it's not like, this is our case. It's, oh, this is your case. No, it's not our case. The county doesn't have sidewalks or curbs, and there's a curb right there. This is a local matter, and the state guys, well, this ain't anywhere near the highway. You're not blaming this on me. And the local guys go, no, it started on county land. This 1050 started on county land. It rolled here after the first collision. You're not sticking this on me. This started off in the county. There is so much work to do between all these agencies that the patrol officers really don't have time to be fighting over cases and like being territorial about who's patrolling what. In fact, normally, I mean, even in a big area where I'm at, like in the Chicagoland area, there's so much work to do that we end up having to call assistance from other agencies with major crimes. You know, if we have a big, like we have 5 people shot at a bar when it closes up at night, we're getting on the state police radio that everybody has on their frequency. It's like an interop channel, and we're calling people in from the county and the state and anybody that'll listen. You know, Secret Service here, they can come on by too. We'll have the conservation police will show up, and we need lots of cops. And we don't care where they come from. We're not going to be territorial about it. So when people ask about these like redundant agencies, you have to understand that although the core job that they're doing is all the same, they're doing very different components of the job, and because of that, they specialize in different things. The state specializes in doing traffic and 1050s and truck enforcement on the highway, and the county is doing all sorts of stuff that isn't police work. You know, they're doing the jails and corrects, all sorts of stuff, civil processes and stuff like that, and the city is primarily worried about traffic and crime. And they're dealing with calls. They're dealing with domestics and robberies and stuff like that the county's going to have a little bit less of and the state's going to have a whole lot less of. That doesn't make any one of those agencies redundant or obsolete. In fact, if you combined all of these different agencies, you'd end up with these big, massive, bloated super agencies. And making government agencies bigger has not been known to make them more efficient, because all these jobs still need to get done. In fact, where I'm at, there's so much work to do that we don't have enough manpower even between the overlapping redundant agencies to get everything done on some nights. Some stuff ends up going by the wayside because there just aren't enough cops to handle it. I can't tell you how many DUIs don't get processed because you're on your way to something else. You know, and the call of some guy swerving ends up getting put on the wayside because there's a domestic where there's 2 people fighting and you know somebody's going to get hurt. You have to go to that. So while I understand the idea that it seems like there's overlap and it seems like government waste and why would you need all these different agencies with these different jurisdictions, it actually, when you start getting into it, makes sense, and it's a lot leaner on manpower than you really give it credit for. It's not the police for the city are patrolling the same streets that the county police are patrolling and the state police are controlling and the federal police are controlling. Those federal police that have marked cars, those guys are either border patrol or they're guarding some federal building. So they're not out on the roads, and the county police have calls that they have to go to in the county, and they might pull traffic when they're in the city because they see something while they're there, but that's not their job. That's not what they're doing most of the day unless we ask them to come in. And the state police, you might see them pull traffic in a city, but it's because they saw something happen on a highway and had them pull off onto the ramp, pull in the city. They're very rarely pulling traffic in the city because it's not their job. You know, and when it comes down to it, if it's not your job, you're not going to do a whole lot of it, even if you are empowered to it. You don't see carpenters walk around with hammers and hammer down nails at restaurants when they're eating. It's not their job to do that. You don't see the mechanic trying to sell cars to customers when they're at work. Their job is to fix the cars, and the salesman's job is to sell the cars. You know, the salesman might help you fix a flat tire if it went out right in front of the doors and he can't get anybody into the showroom, and the mechanic might tell you about a car if he happens to be through the parking lot, but they have different jobs, and so there isn't this overlap that people generally think about. Well, I hope that clears some of that up for you. It's not this big, wasteful overlap that you think it is. All these different agencies actually have very separate jobs, and the overlap you see is just because all you're seeing is them pulling traffic stops. And you know what? To be honest with you, if all you are seeing is them pulling traffic stops, that's a good thing. That means most of the time you're not getting in trouble. I'd like to thank all the Patreon supporters, and especially the shift supervisor level Patreon supporters that we have listed here. Your contributions are what allows free field training to continue on and become better. Thank you.